the most dangerous times is for victims of domestic violence is leaving. And I know before I say any of that, like the biggest mistake that you can make is tell a narcissistic abuser that you're trying to leave.
Yeah.
And I did that at least 4 times.
Hello and welcome back to Authentic on Air with Bruce Alexander. I'm your host, Bruce Alexander. Put some time aside right now and stay locked in, because this is going to be one of the most interesting investigations into authenticity I've done yet. Maralen Pennyfeather is here, and we're going to get into surviving domestic abuse, trying to make it in the music industry, contacting past lives, and advocating for neurodivergence, plus much more after today's reflection. Today, I want to think about the difference between authenticity and honoring yourself and just failing to grow. The last time you said, "that's just the way I am," was someone on the receiving end of your you-ness being hurt. Is that who you are? A person who hurts people unapologetically and has no desire to evolve? This might seem like obvious behavior to many, but this used to be me. And this is what I grew up with. The phrase that was the soundtrack to my childhood: "I don't write the news, I just report it as I see it." That was code for, I just said something out of pocket to you, and you don't deserve an apology. It took a lot of intentional work for me to unlearn that view of authenticity. This is just who I am. Deal with it. If you are listening to this show and still applying that principle to your life and relationships, I accept you as you are in your journey, but I challenge you to reject the idea that we are ever done. Take some time to reflect on your existence and the relationships in your life, and be brutally honest about the quality of what you find. Are the connections that are important to you suffering because of your stunted growth? It is never too late to take accountability for your fault in the decline in or failure of a relationship. I can't promise you any resulting outcome for those relationships, but I can guarantee that if you clean up your emotional litter and continue to keep your side of the street clean, the quality of your relationships that you maintain will start to improve, as will the quality of the connections you attract. I would love to hear from the authentic audience. Tell me if you have embraced the boundless nature of personal growth, or if you've gotten stuck in the "this is just who I am" thinking. Go to the episode 24 reflection post on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, or LinkedIn at Authentic Identity Management. If you are tired of hurting people but need help getting out of that detrimental philosophy, type "stuck" in the comments section, and I will take the lead and contact you and set up a free 30-minute consultation to learn how I can help you start living more authentically. If you love the space we are creating or want to help advance my mission of making the world a safer place for authenticity, here are a few ways you can support the show. Leave a review and tell me what you think is great, needs work, or what you would like to see more of in the show. Follow the show on your favorite podcast platform or all the platforms you use. Use that share function. Send an episode of this show to someone you care about, or post about it in your social media feeds and in your stories. These are all free ways to support the Authentic Mission. If you aren't comfortable being a spokesperson for authenticity, you can be a financial backer of the Authentic Mission by going to Patreon and searching Authentic on Air with Bruce Alexander and signing up for membership. I am dedicated to the work of this mission long term, but I would love your help in more quickly making the world a safer place to show up as yourself. My guest today has the distinguished honor to be the first two-time guest with an asterisk. Taylor Doe did make a second appearance for a very special episode 20, where I took the guest seat in the Authentic on Air studio and he pirated my host title. If you haven't checked that out, put that next on your playlist right now. It was such an engaging conversation and a great opportunity to get to know me, my motivations, and my mission a lot better. Maralen Pennyfeather first appeared as guest as one half of the Marvelous Miss Tonic Muggles podcast team. She is back today to talk about her story as an individual, and this is guaranteed to deliver some fresh content that I have definitely not approached before. ADHD, autistic, disabled, musician, yoga practitioner, abuse survivor, stay-at-home mother, educator, advocate, visionary, Reiki healer are some, but not all the ways Maralen identifies. She characterizes herself as a jack of all trades and a master of many. I know already that Maralen and I don't agree on everything, but I loved her energy so much. She carried that with her from the very start. As a fellow ADHDer, I appreciate her ability to be well-versed in so many facets, but even more so appreciate her support of the Authentic Mission. Through her own podcast and enthusiastic support of my podcast, and her use of social media as a platform, she is actively in line with the objective of making the world a safer place to show up as yourself daily. I'm going to end the intro there because I am positive we are going to use up every moment of my 2-hour recording window, engaged in intense conversation. I can't wait to get into it. Welcome to the show, Maralen Pennyfeather.
Hi. I'm so excited to be back.
Yay! There's an applause button. I should use that. I don't know if I want the show to be that corny.
Hey, I love corny, yeah. I'm into that corn.
So before we get too deep into it, I'm very happy to have you back on. But let's start with you telling me in your own words how you spend the majority of your time, why you think I invited you on the show, and like really who you are.
Oh, wow. That's a loaded question. Okay. Might have to break that down. So right now I am spending a lot of my time healing. I escaped a 12-year domestic violence relationship last January. And so it's crazy to think we're coming up on 2 years already. Like it's went by really fast, but that has been my sole mission, is to heal. And I don't feel like anyone can ever truly be completely healed. And I don't think that that's the goal, because then that would mean that there's nothing left. Like what's after you're healed? You know what I mean? Like what happens when you get to that destination? So I feel like there's always ways for us to heal and evolve, like you said, ways to transform and transmutate our energy. And so that is really what I've been dedicating myself to, is just healing and resetting my nervous system. You know, when you are in a chronic state of survival mode, living in that type of abuse, when your environment is primarily chaos and dysfunction, your body goes into a hyper, like you're more hyper aware, you're in hypervigilance, you're in survival. And so that sends your body into like a sympathetic state, and your nervous system can't regulate. So I'm trying to get back to the parasympathetic state and relax. So, which is easier said than done.
To dumb that down a little bit, you're trying to get back from your upstairs brain down into your downstairs brain.
Pretty much. Yeah, absolutely.
I feel that.
Yeah. So, but aside from that, like, I did, last year, I got put on disability, and it's something that I was fighting for 2 years for. I ended up having to get an attorney to help because I was denied the first 2 times. And I have lived the majority of my life since I was like 17, 18 years old with chronic pain. I started out like having migraines, like very early on. Like I remember being in junior high and like calling to come home because like my migraines were so severe. And then it just kind of like progressed to having like numerous surgeries for different things, being in a car accident that left me with nerve damage. And then as a result of being in violent relationships, like that is really like hard on the immune system. And so it develops like chronic illnesses such as like fibromyalgia, RA. And so I knew that I needed help, you know, and I struggled with working because like as an ADHDer, like it is really difficult to work. Like it's very hard to find a job. And I know everyone's experience is different. For me, I always struggled with having jobs. Like I've had like a million jobs since I was like 15, you know, grocery store, Walgreens. I will say like one of the funnest jobs I had was I managed a shoe store. I managed Journeys. And that was something I could do. Like I really felt strong and confident because I got to do things that I never thought I was capable of doing. And I was able to just like be myself, which was really awesome. And you get to connect with different people every day and sell them cool shoes, you know? So.
And also that discount though, right?
Yeah, it was like 40% off. Okay. So my kid game was strong back then, you know. I got them Reeboks, you know, them Converse. So that's where like my paycheck went. But yeah, it was really difficult. So I was like always wanting to like do what I wanted to do. And I loved to sing. I grew up singing in the church. And then I had always done hair. My mother had did hair, but she wasn't like well versed in like natural curly hair or anything. And because I grew up in the Black community, like I was just so like fascinated with Black hair and natural curly hair. So like I really just wanted to learn how to do that. So I had a friend that taught me how to do cornrows. I think I was in like 7th grade. And then I just like continued. And then I ended up getting I'm a licensed hair braider. I took that test I think 2014. And then I worked in the salon for a little bit, which was really overstimulating and emotionally taxing. I think if I would have like been in my own little suite, it would have been different, because like the vibe that I wanted to create was like just really chill. I was always playing like Erykah Badu or, Jill Scott, like things like that, just very like chill. And it was really difficult and challenging being a white person in an all white salon who primarily just served Black clients. So like that was really difficult for my clients as well.
Yeah.
So it just didn't really feel like a safe environment all the time. So I like just started doing house calls and going to people's houses where it was just more comfortable. And then, it just got to the point when COVID happened, I couldn't anymore. So my health was just like really declining. And so, yeah, I got on disability last year. And that has really given me an opportunity to like rest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just do what I need to do to take care of myself, because I knew that I needed that to be able to, one, financially provide for myself and my kids, getting out of my relationship, and so my mind just went blank. I forgot what you asked.
I want to get into your relationship eventually, but first I want to make sure we set the proper framework.
Sure.
So can you tell me how you define authenticity?
Oh. I think I would define that as just like my brain wants to say like showing up as the highest version of yourself. And I think that sometimes it's hard to get there because we don't see ourselves there, especially like if you've been gaslighted a lot. So you don't really know how to like trust yourself or believe that you're capable of those things. But I do think that if you can envision what your highest self looks like, and I've been able to do that a lot with like doing shadow work and journaling, has really been helpful for that. You'll eventually get there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just like having just like you talk to your inner child or past versions of yourself or whatever, I think when you can also talk to the highest version of yourself, like what would she say? What would he say? How do you think that they would speak to you? Would they speak life into you? Light, would they be uplifting and encouraging, or would there be a lot of doubt, self-negative talk that I can't do this, or I'm not capable, or I'm not enough? I don't think your highest self would talk like that, And so I really had to like put myself in that place to be like, dang, like I don't want to remain a victim my whole life either. So like, when do I get to like show up for myself,
So you think that
authentic?
Your authentic self has a lot more to do with aspiration and reality? I mean,
can you reframe that?
Yes, I can, because I think that saying it's not real is not correct.
Yeah.
Is it more about aspiration than perception? Like what you're currently perceiving as who you actually are? You think it's more about who you want to be and trying to have a conversation with that person?
Not necessarily, because I feel like your highest self is who you've always been, but we forget through conditioning, through through society telling us we have to conform, what we should and shouldn't be, the environments you were raised in. So I think it's the person that you've always been. So it's more about like returning home to that person, like a homecoming, And so, and I feel like the closer and closer you get, then you do start to remember, oh, dang, like I have always been this. I am worthy. This is my birthright. I've always been deserving of this kind of love. And so it's really just about remembering.
I think that really helps for me to reframe it that way, is that you've always been there.
Yeah.
It's just getting back to that.
Right.
I love that.
Right.
So how would others describe you, both correctly and incorrectly?
Oh, I hate these questions.
And so you can tell me why you hate that question. You can talk about that too.
Yeah. I think because I've always struggled with like talking about myself. So, and it's like a, I don't know. I've always struggled with giving myself like self praise or anything like that, because that wasn't the environment that I grew up in either. And so it's really about like unlearning that I'm allowed to celebrate myself. I'm allowed to feel good about myself. I'm allowed to be confident. But I think for women in particular too, it's like such a double-edged sword, because it's like, you know, you should love yourself and self-love, and you should be confident, and you should love your body, and you should do all these things. And then when you do start to do those things, why are you being so cocky? Why are you being so self-absorbed? Or, you know, oh, she just loves to show herself off, or she just loves it. And it's like, so when do I get to feel that? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, yeah, questions like that have always like, it's been hard to like talk about myself. So it's something I'm working through. I would say, oh man, I don't know. She's loving. She is kind. She is weird and outgoing and loves to just play. She's giving. Eccentric, maybe. Talented, like well versed.
And do you identify with all those descriptions?
I do. So I think that's like a part of healing right now. Like, like in this moment, really just like saying those things out loud to myself, knowing that like those things are part of me, and not all or one define who I am either. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So
I think that I'm really embracing the idea that those conversations of how would somebody else speak to me, both in this situation, somebody who loves me, somebody who knows me, how would they speak to me? And then talking to yourself that way, because I know that like I am definitely terrible about negative self-talk.
Yeah.
You know, and the effect that it does to you is like, it's like the person who is supposed to love you the very most is giving you just terrible feedback, criticism all the time. Yeah. And your body can't really tell the difference.
No.
So you're wearing that. And so I think it's really so important to think, how would somebody who loves me describe me? What would they say?
Right.
And then realize that you love you. Right. So maybe you should say those things to yourself.
Yeah. It's easier said than done.
It's so 1000% agree. I know it's hard.
It's really hard. And I think that's a part of like working through ego, because like, I think when we talk about like ego death, like, of course, we're not meaning it in a physical sense either, but I think the goal isn't to get rid of ego, because everything is about balance, and ego is a part of who we are, but it's more about gaining control over your own mind and being in the driver's seat of that, instead of allowing ego to always drive, because that's where that negative self-chatter and everything comes in, because that's its role, you know, is to create doubt, fear, worry, you know, insecurities, or you can't trust anybody, or, you know, these people are saying these things about you, or, you know, and so it's just all of these seeds of lower vibrational thought. And so I think when you can come to the point of awareness where you can just like observe and be like, that's an interesting thought, and then like not judge it, and then let it pass and not give any action to it.
Yeah.
you know, where like you don't internalize that and just be like, well, that's a weird thought I just had. Well, it's not true because thoughts are just thoughts. So we get to choose what we accept as our truth or not. And that's really hard. Like if you were abused as a child or you grew up and entered into traumatic relationships or, you know, you were gaslighted, like there's so much insecurities and lack of just inner knowing of yourself because you've been told of who you should be, that it's hard to really curate what that means. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like it's very hard to navigate through as like trauma survivors because gaslighting causes like such severe psychological damage. And so like really gaining to learn that you can trust yourself and your intuition is like probably one of the hardest things to heal from.
I definitely, my intuition is not something that like I have a super strong connection to, but I know how hard that can be, you know, getting back to something you're supposed to believe.
Yeah.
And, you know, you were talking about having emotions and just observing them. I saw a video this morning about, you know, it was like, oh, that was an interesting emotion. And then it was just a floating by and then you just moved on. And it's funny because I think that it's so easy for me. Like I will have a positive thought about myself and I do that. It's like, you know, oh, that was great. And it's like, it just in one ear out the other. That happened. But like I look in the mirror and I think, oh man, you're so overweight. And I never let that just flow through. That's the one that's like, well, now I'm going to just ruminate on that thought and I'm going to, you know, I'm going to beat myself up and make myself like, I would love to be where I can have both positive and negative thoughts and just let them flow through and not hang on to them. So that's, I mean, that's the goal, right?
I resonate with that so heavily because, you know, like our bodies are ever changing. We're not 12 years old anymore. And I think like, I know that there's like stigmas on both sides of like such pressure to like look and be a certain way. But like with women, like, you know, again, there's that like, look young, you gotta look young, you gotta look young, everything. And it's like, I'm not 12 anymore. I have a woman's body. You know, I don't have to like, not have a fupa or whatever the case may be. My flesh colored fanny pack. I love you. I love you.
Pack. Oh my God.
Yes.
Wow, that's brand new.
It's so great.
You should coin that term.
This is where like, you know, the Doritos sit, you know, and Taco Bell, like, you know, but like, I think that when you can have like a balance and like, for instance, like with food, I always had a really negative relationship with food. And a lot of that was like developed from my abusive relationship because he was like super into working out. He had done steroids since he was 18. Like all the food was always regulated in the house. Like the nitpicking with me started like, I mean, within like the first 2 months that we were even together, just slowly picking at you and making you feel insecure about yourself. And like, the way that narcissists will do it, they will give you criticism and try to say that they're doing it for your well-being, like they're helping you. And so because you love that person, you believe them, like, okay, well, I trust him. Like he knows what he's talking about. Like, and so that became a really like heavy thing for me. And I, you know, when you have like ADHD, like you hyperfixate. You know, so then I started having terrible like anxiety around food because then it felt like everything I ate was just shame. Like nothing that I ate, everything had a wrong ingredient or carbs or whatever, or fat and macros, counting your macros. And you got to have a certain calorie intake and you went over your calories for the day. And like, I mean, I had my fitness pal and there's nothing wrong with tracking your food and doing those things, but being in an abusive relationship, it was wrong and it was not okay. And it was very detrimental to my health and how I viewed myself. And I remember like the last 2 years that I was in that relationship is when I really started my healing journey while I was still in there, which is crazy. And I stopped working out. And it was just like, I couldn't do it anymore because it wasn't fun. Like I hated going to the gym. Like I preferred to like go hiking or ride my bike or dance or, you know what I mean? Like, I just hated the gym environment. It was just such toxic masculinity all the time. And like, I hated being sexualized going to the gym, you know? And so, I stopped working out, and man, it was like shame, shame, shame. And I just remember being so proud of myself for like standing up and like, you know, if me and the kids wanted ice cream one day, I would go get ice cream, and he was just like, you don't need that. And I'm just like, but I want it, so I'm going to go get it. Mm-hmm. And he was just like, well, I can't eat that or I'll be over my calories for the day. And I'm like, okay, well, you don't have to eat it, but I want ice cream right now, so I'm going to go get it.
Yeah.
You know, and like, I was really starting to like set boundaries and stand up for myself. And I remember being in the kitchen one day, and like the sun was just shining and I had shorts on, and he started laughing, and he was like, oh my God, what is that? And I just immediately knew that he was talking about cellulite on my leg, which cellulite is not even a real thing. And we'll talk about that later. But like, and he was like, when did you get that? And I was like, oh, are you talking about my cellulite? I was like, it's always been there. And I was like, don't you love it? You know, and I was just like being super sarcastic. And I'm like, you know, it just made me realize like everything is projections, you know? So like he was projecting his own insecurities on me, but that doesn't mean that it didn't linger, because it heavily did. And I've struggled really hard the last 2 years to like have self-acceptance for my body and the way that it's changed, because it fluctuated so much. Like before I left, like I got down to like 105 pounds.
Good Lord.
And
how tall are you for people who are
5'1"?
So that's,
yeah,
that's like a, 14, 13-year-old. My daughter outweighs that by 15 pounds.
My 12-year-old weighs like 180 pounds. 13, so like
right?
Everyone else, you know, bigger, taller than me. And last year I was really doing a lot of body work. And I mean like forcing myself to stand in the mirror naked and look at every inch of me and like touch myself, get familiar with like honing in on my sensuality, my sexuality, and like all of the parts of myself that had been violated, and having to really regain like safe physical touch with myself. And that was really important for me. And so, I mean, like in the last, like, you know, year, I mean, I've gained like almost 20 pounds. I feel like that's a great thing.
So I want to kind of stay at that moment, because I like talking about standing in the mirror naked and like spending time with yourself there. That makes me feel super uncomfortable. So that means like, I want to talk about that a little bit, because I've never been sexually abused. I've never been in an abusive relationship where I was the abused. I feel like I have been unintentionally abusive, and I have been a very bad partner many times. Even in my current marriage, I had to grow a lot before I could say I think I was a good partner. But being on the other side, I'm still terrified of that. And I think that, you know, there's some emotional abuse that comes from the way I was raised.
Okay.
And my mom has always, not always, but as long as I can remember, been overweight. My dad has had some weight issues, but they both put all of that on me. And so that idea of doing that makes me feel like just so nervous. Like, how often did you do that? What were your takeaways? What were the benefits? And like, what was the thought process?
I still do that because it's still hard. You know what I mean? Because like my body literally will change like from week to week. Like, I mean, I can have one day I wake up and like my stomach is so bloated. It looks like I've gained like 4 pounds, like just overnight. And then I'm like, nothing fits, you know? And so like, it's still like a daily struggle. And I just have to remind myself that like, I am doing the best that I can. And I'm making mindful choices. And because I had to like really stop labeling things, because everything was always labeled as like good and bad. Like this food is bad, this food is good. And I started following like, she was like a kids nutritionist, and she teaches like eating in color and like mindful eating. And I like using that term better because I feel like when we put labels on things, it really limits, how we view food. And then plus like the way that our food is now, everything is like genetically modified or there's preservatives. It's like you really are just doing the best that you can because this is what we're given. So unless you're growing your own garden, like everything has shit in it and like it sucks. You know what I mean? So I just had to really learn, especially like with raising kids, that I don't want to carry that over. And I want to be mindful in the way that I talk about food. So like even with like sugar, say we're talking about sugar, instead of like saying that's bad, I can give a description of like what, say like a bag of Skittles. Well, this is going to give us energy really, really quick. And then we're going to have a crash later. And then whereas like if we eat fruit, that's going to give us sustainable energy to last us through the day. And we're not going to have that big crash.
Yeah.
So we're not saying there's anything wrong with having Skittles. I'm just giving them like logic and reason of this is what it does to your body. And so, like we still have those things, you know what I mean? And I think that's what life is about, balance. And so when it comes to how you view yourself physically, you have to have grace and compassion because like we didn't choose these skin bags, you know what I mean? Like we were just, this is what we got, you know what I mean? And so my appearance has changed so much over the years. Like, I mean, I used to have hair like down to my butt. And that was always like, I felt like that was like my sole identity for like the longest because that's how everybody like would identify me was like by my hair. Mm-hmm. And it became one of those things where it was just like truly like heavy, like not just in the physical sense, but like emotionally, I felt like my hair was carrying like a lot of pain. Mm. So, I mean, even just yesterday, I mean, I just shaved it because I was just like, ugh, I just want to feel free, you know? But it's still like a daily struggle. I still look in the mirror and like I grab my stomach and my sides, and it's more like, I don't look at it as like disgust. I'm just like, that's interesting. Like my body is like changing. You know what I mean? And
is that really what you're thinking, or is that what you're trying to think?
I feel like it's a mixture of both because I'm still learning to have grace and compassion in the ways that like my body doesn't look the same as it did like 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. You know, because like I haven't been working out like that. I've lost a lot of muscle mass. You know, like I went from, you know, being so proud that I could like leg press like 365 pounds. And now I'm like doing leg extensions and it's like 60 pounds, you know? And so I have to like really be careful with my own thought because, you know, I was diagnosed with major depression disorder and anxiety and stuff as well. And like, that's a slippery slope. You know, and if you have ADHD on top of that, like you were talking about, you can ruminate and ruminate and ruminate, guilt. And so I think it would be very dishonest of me to say that I didn't have those thoughts about myself. Like, I think that that's just a part of being human. Like, I don't really feel like anyone is ever 100% happy like every single day. I think that's an unrealistic expectation as far as like
happiness is not really the goal.
No, like, it's not.
You know, my wife and I have had this conversation many times because I used to say, really, I don't care. I just want to be happy. And that's not at all true anymore. Right. It's like, I want to live a life of purpose. I want to be purposeful.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to have intention. Those are the things that are important to me now. It's like, there's going to be pain and there's going to be suffering. But I want to be living for something. I want to live for my children. I want to live to grow. Yeah. And, you know, and that's the difference. It's like, I just want to be happy. And I was happy spending 12 hours a day on the couch, watching golf, watching TV, playing video games. And I was quote unquote happy.
Wow.
But looking back on that time is like, wow, that was a lot of wasted time.
That's huge though. I love that. Thank you. I really do love that.
Pat on the back.
That's great. Yeah. Air high five.
Yeah, I appreciate your openness about that because, you know, I asked that question because I don't want anybody to think that you're ever fully there.
No.
You know, a lot of, you know, especially whenever it comes to fitness, people will say, you know, like, my body is amazing. Like, you know, I look at my body and think how great it is and how much I love its function and this and that. And it's like, you might think those thoughts, and I'm really glad that you do. But if you deny the fact those other thoughts ever come up, then you're not being authentic.
No.
And you're putting out a false narrative out there to people who are going to aspire to that and then beat themselves up when they fall short. And that's what I really just want to avoid any more of that.
Yeah.
Of adding that into the universe of.
It's like a toxic positivity.
Yeah.
You know what absolutely. I mean? And like, that's the thing. Like I think one of the things for me was like, because especially he was always like I had as a child and even as an adult, like my mother would make comments on my body. Same. And so like I was always like thicker, like, you know, growing up, and I had curves. And so like as a white girl too, having curves, like that was just like another thing. And like for my mom, it was like shame. And so she would always make comments about like, you know, oh, your butt looks so big, or, you know, just, and it was like, it should have been a compliment, you know what I'm saying? But like coming from her, everything about my body was like nasty or shameful, like me shaving my vagina for the first time. You're so nasty. And I'm just like, what is nasty about that? Like,
why do you have any say in this conversation?
And it's just like everything. If I, you know, wore certain clothes, or anytime I change my, like, she will tell you, like, I don't like it. And I'm like, well, then don't cut your hair that way. You know,
well, white women have been America's standard of beauty for a long time. Yes. And it has only become like, I'd say in the last 10 years, maybe, has it been widely accepted for a white woman who is on the like thicker side to be considered widely attractive. Yeah. And I think that's crazy. Yeah. Because I mean, that's the natural state of many people's bodies. Yes. And the fact that we ever had like an ideal of what standard beauty was is really one of the most ridiculous thoughts that I've ever bought into.
Even Marilyn Monroe was like, I think, a size 14 or 16.
Marilyn Monroe was thick.
Yes. And so like, it's wild to think that like how that got there, even for body hair. Body hair was something that was always seen as a thing of beauty and was normalized. And then white men, you know, at some point, I think it was in like the 1930s or maybe 20s, it became a thing where they started like saying like, oh, like women needed to shave. So then they started associating Black people or people of color having body hair with like animals or whatever. And then they started to put white women on the covers with shaved armpits, and then promoting razors and things like that. And you don't want to look like this, you know? And so like that just goes to show you.
I wonder how much does that have to do with the razor industry?
Oh, I'm sure.
Like I heard something recently about the creation of like the proposal. How that was like, I think it was Tiffany's kind of made the diamond ring a thing. Like if you don't propose to your wife with the diamond ring, then you don't love her. Right. And that was in the early 1900s, and it became this lie that we all bought. Fear. And it was like, well, I don't want her to think that I don't love her, so I better come with the diamond ring.
I don't want to be rejected.
And that's exactly. Yeah. And how long has that? I mean, I feel like the last 5-10 years has kind of been an awakening of a lot of things, but that's something that is like no longer so widely accepted to where you have to come with a ring that is what, like 3 months of your salary or something? Yeah. Like Tiffany's got you. Like they hook, line, and sinker, best marketing ever done, because for, you know, almost 100 years, they made people think that they had to spend up to $125,000 on a ring if they made, you know, that much in 3 months. Right. That's wild.
It is wild.
So wild.
Yeah. I feel like the majority of our culture is really just perpetuated by fear, like with anything. I mean, Whether you look at holidays or anything, everything is like, if you don't have this, you're excluded, or
you're the other.
You're the other. Yeah.
Othering is very popular
yes.
in our society. And that's, I'm not going to say that it's going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
Like, I other people about the iPhone. Like, it's like, oh, you're still using an Android. You got the green text message bubble. Like, are we even friends? Like, and, I didn't ever really think about what I was putting out there whenever I said that until recently. It was like, oh my God, I'm othering people. Like, I'm this person who really likes to think that my friends are somebody who finds acceptance in me. But then I make fun of them for choosing a different path on this one thing. Right. Although it's jokingly, it's kind of toxic.
Yeah, it is.
And it's like, is that what I want to put out there?
Yeah.
And so I've had to, look at that. So
that's great.
You said something a while back that I want to get back to. You talked about kind of small wins that you had setting boundaries in your abusive relationship. It's often looked at kind of so black and white, like either you leave or you're losing. Do you think that it was necessary for you to like build the foundation of small wins to have the kind of base built to actually have a successful exit out of that relationship?
Well, it wasn't successful. Like, it wasn't it was a dangerous exit.
I meant to be out on the other side.
No, for sure. But like, that is one of the most dangerous times is for victims of domestic violence is leaving. And I know before I say any of that, like, the biggest mistake that you can make is tell a narcissistic abuser that you're trying to leave.
Yeah.
And I did that at least 4 times, and so that was a huge mistake. And I think for me, because
tell us why it's a huge mistake, because I know that there's a couple of things that you're thinking of, but I want other people who don't have your, training and your education to understand.
Well, especially for like malignant and covert narcissists, like, they can be extremely dangerous and violent. The majority of narcissistic abuse is psychological. And only about 10% of abuse is physical in these relationships, which normally does not occur until a victim is trying to leave.
Yeah.
And so during that time, there are so many tactics that narcissistic abusers use to further control their victims, to wear them down emotionally. Sleep deprivation is one of them, which means that they will keep you in circulatory word salad conversations for 2 to 3 hours at a time to drain you physically, emotionally. So that way you don't have energy left to do anything else. So and they'll wake you up at 12 o'clock at night, fling open the door, rip the covers off of you, turn the light on in the bathroom, and produce these circulatory conversations to just keep you. And then the next day, they will be like, they'll gaslight you about why you're tired and guilt you, like if you're sleeping or taking a nap. I know one day, this is like right before Christmas, he did that and kept me up until 3 o'clock in the morning. And the next day he was love bombing the kids and was like playing a board game that we had been saying that we were going to play all week.
Love bombing real quick.
Love bombing. Yes. Love bombing is a part of emotional abuse. Love bombing is a term that's also kind of like associated with intermittent reinforcement, which is where they will produce these grand gestures, like they might act like they're getting better, say they're getting help, promising to go on future trips, like I bought a trip to Disney World, or going on a cabin or booked a cabin trip, because I know you've been talking about that for the last 10 years,
Calling a therapist. Yeah, I'm starting to work on myself.
Yeah, the military is helping me. They put me on antidepressants and anything that they can say and do to re-hook a victim to stay.
Which they want to make it look like they've heard your complaints and they're acting on it and being quote unquote better.
Well,
Right.
and that's one of the, a mistake as well is telling a narcissist the ways that they've hurt you, because they weaponize anything that you say. Anything you can say will be used against you. But particularly that, if you tell a narcissist the ways that they've wronged you, hurt you, abused you, that will be heavily weaponized. And they will start to, it can happen of one of two ways. Like, it will further escalate abuse, or it will further escalate the what's called like hoovering or hovering, where they are just like on you all the time. Like, I mean, following you around the house, harassing you, following your car, where you're going, checking, hey, did you make it to the store? Well, how long are you going to be there? Controlling your every move. And so, I just went blank again.
So,
what did you ask?
So we kind of covered love bombing a little bit, what that looks like.
Yeah.
And you were telling me about how he had kept you up until 3 o'clock around Christmas.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Love bombing the kids.
Yes.
I just wanted to give that background to other people.
Yes, the game. So, he was doing that, and he came in, and I was like, wow, so like you guys were just like playing the game without me. And then he was just like, he was like, yeah, he was like, I was wondering why, you were in there sleeping. And I was like, I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, you kept me up until 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm tired because I already have chronic illnesses. And so I'm like fatigued anyway. And he was like, yeah, it's probably because of like, you just drive around so much all the time, and you're always going places, picking the kids up from school, going to the grocery store, little things like that, And so like, that's a way of like gaslighting you. And then to say like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that didn't happen, and then like, oh yeah, like me and the kids had so much fun, things like that. Yeah, we really wanted you to come out there and play, but you were taking a nap, And so it's a way to weaponize the ways that they've hurt you, and to continue to do that. And they will use the children in order to do that, especially if you have children with a narcissist. So,
the original question was like, did you feel like that foundation of those small wins created a successful exit? And so we kind of figured out it was not a successful exit. It was a dangerous exit.
It was.
But you were successful in leaving.
Correct.
And do you feel like that would have been, I guess I do. If you listen to the previous episode, we kind of talked about how she did leave once and she ended up coming back. Were you lacking those boundaries that you had started to set, and that confidence you started to gain yourself whenever you left the first time?
Oh, absolutely. When I left the first time, this was 2018, and actually the previous year, so we chose to have another child in 2015, and I had my tubes tied.
Did we choose, or did
we both chose? Okay. Like it was a mutual agreement. Like, I took out my birth control. Like I had always wanted 2 children. And it was one of those phases, like, they will say things to pretend to play like they want things, or you're doing things together, and then when it happens, like, they have no interest in raising their children or taking care of their children. And in fact, many narcissistic abusers are often jealous of like their own children. Like, I had like a Facebook message when we first got together, and that's how we communicated. Even when we were overseas, we spent the first 3 years of our life in Japan, and Dakin, my son, was sick one time, and I sent a picture, and I was like, he's, you can tell he's not feeling very well because he's just been wanting me to hold him like all day. And he was like, fuck him, and just having that type of reaction to any attention that was not on him, even with his own children. And so back to your question, I felt like having boundaries, that was something I didn't even know was a thing, because I never was taught boundaries as a child. My mother overrode that all the time. Like, I had no privacy, or, busting in my room, or always, what are you doing in there? What are you doing in there? And I never had any privacy.
Was your mom a narcissist?
Yeah. She is more of like there's different classifications of narcissists, and there's all different types of narcissists. And my mother was very abusive as a child. We can get into that later, but she's more of like a level 1 narcissist. And so I think the patterns that were shown to her as a child carried over with her. And I was just the one that she took that out on. And so like now as an adult, she still is who she is, but she's not physically abusive. She's not emotionally abusive. And it's more of something that I've had to reparent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And set boundaries. And that's a whole healing journey itself. We'll go down that road.
I will briefly say, for anybody who's listening, if you don't know this, whenever you become an adult, you're supposed to start parenting yourself.
Yeah.
And this is something I never considered. I didn't ever think about that whole thought process until this year. Mm-hmm. You know, I consider myself a pretty progressive and, and person who's like really focused on my personal growth. Mm-hmm. But I never thought about the fact that in the absence of your parents, mm-hmm. it becomes your job to do what your parents were supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And if they did it wrong, you gotta start further back. Mm-hmm. And you gotta, not wrong. If they didn't do what you needed, let's say that. Yeah. Because, for whatever reason, we gotta have grace for our parents. And
we're still holding them accountable.
Yes, we're still holding them accountable. And I was actually gonna ask that.
Yeah.
As a narcissist, does your mom accept culpability for the things that you went through?
She has, to an extent. So she's participated in therapy conversations, or sessions with us as a family. Because since we are living with them, it's very important for them to have the awareness of what my children need, what they're going through, that they're still in active trauma, and have the understanding of what I went through, in that, this is not about placing blame, and I don't need an apology or anything like that. I spent like 30 years of my life like blaming my mom, you know what I mean, for things, and it wasn't serving me, you know what I mean? And because I was seeking that from her. I just wanted her to hear me and validate my pain. But I had to realize like she wasn't capable of doing that. And so I needed to give that healing and like love to myself, because I was searching for that outside of me. And so fast forward to now, like she does. And my mom is something, she's always been capable of empathy. Like she's always had great empathy. And she's super, super like helpful with other people. And now granted, like with narcissists, like that's a common thing. Like they're more kind, more helpful to other people outside of the house than they are with you. But I think now that I'm able to have clarity, and even just within the last week, I've had really beautiful childhood memories that have came up with my mom. And so that's been very healing for me to because I was always, when you're in active trauma, like your body blocks out everything else. And that's all you can remember is the bad.
Yeah.
And so it was very important for me in my healing journey to remember the good things. So I would get out photo albums and like look at pictures so I could see my face, see my little eyes, and see like what I was feeling in that moment, And now, she's opened up about her childhood, and she's in a more receiving space where she's able to see in the ways that carried over, and I think that's been such a beautiful thing. And she's getting less reactive because, as a child, it's not your job to parent your parent. And I've had to like really understand that she didn't have an example of what love was. Her mother never told her she even loved her. Mm. And there was a situation that happened, and it's like if you would try to address something with her, her immediate response is to get defensive and deflect. And I remember looking at her, and I grabbed her and I looked at her and I said, I love you. And I said, no one is attacking you. You don't have to get defensive. I love you. And I'm coming to you with love. Because I love you, that's why I'm telling you these things. So that way we can learn how to communicate in a healthier way. And I hugged her and she just put her head on my shoulder and she got emotional. And I said, you don't have to be in survival anymore. You don't have to be defensive because no one is attacking you. And it's okay to make mistakes. But like having these conversations is important because this is how we course correct. This is how we literally change DNA.
Yeah.
Is by having these uncomfortable conversations. And I remember being in a therapy session and the therapist, my mom, was disassociating and deflecting. And she was like, she validated that. And she said, I can see that you're really struggling to stay present in this conversation. And it's uncomfortable, and my mom got emotional and she was like, it is. And she said, because we didn't know that she was going through that. And so it was very hard for her to like accept that that was happening. And especially with the kids and the things that my children have experienced at the hands of their father.
Yeah.
And so that was very hard for her. And she was like, I just feel so helpless because I didn't know and I didn't know what to do. And it's like her and my dad were saying, they kind of always had some type of like inner knowing, but they were afraid to say anything. And they were like, because we didn't want to upset you or, we just wanted you to be happy and, things like that.
And that inner knowing was that you were in an abusive relationship?
Yeah. Like I think they knew from the beginning because of things that happened and that were in my own house, like with him. And then times like when me and the children would come stay for a week at a time, and so, but never would say anything why, And so I think they had an inner knowing, but it was really hard to know what to do as a parent. And because,
real quick, I have another question.
Yeah.
Is narcissism a state that you can move out of, or is that something that you are a narcissist? Because it seems like your mother has moved on the spectrum of her narcissism and being able to be more mindful of other people.
So, you can have narcissistic traits that you have carried over from a parenthood-child relationship, but true NPD is often something that is not curable because it requires taking accountability. And that's why, like, God, I think it's like maybe like 2% or a little bit more people get diagnosed with NPD because nobody wants to go to counseling or therapy, like, because that requires accountability.
So do you think that your mom just had narcissistic traits that she was conditioned in?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think that she has NPD at all. And this is also something coming from my therapist who is a clinically trained in narcissism, and she's a psychotherapist. And that's very important too when looking for a therapist. If anyone, victim survivors, have experienced anything like this, even if it's just from a parent, is making sure to find a therapist that is knowledgeable on narcissism, because it is a slippery slope if you don't, because there are many, like even spiritual gurus, counselors, therapists that can really do a lot of damage to victims. That way they will further gaslight, self-blame. They will try to encourage victims to stay with abusers, to work things out, to reconnect with their parents and make it their responsibility. You just need to forgive. You just need to forgive. And so without having someone that has that type of training, you just have to be very careful. And then if there's people that are in relationships with narcissistic abusers and they get into a relationship like that and they don't have a therapist that is trained, they will manipulate those therapy sessions.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had that happen in our first session because it was with like a church counselor, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, I had religious indoctrination so heavily too, you know? But yeah, like it's been really healing for us as a family, especially being in my childhood home that like caused me so significant pain, to be in a place where love can grow.
Yeah.
And you can heal in small spaces. And I knew that if I could bring healing in that space, the space that I was hurt in as a child, that I could do anything, you know? And so I really let that like heal me. But I want to go back to your question about when I first left. Like,
hold on, real quick before you say that, I just want to, you said finding somebody, a specialist in narcissism. I just want to make sure that if you're dealing with any specific, like, I don't know, like personality or like disease or mental problem or whatever, I would always highly suggest finding a specialist in that thing. Because, I mean, if you have cancer, you're going to go to the oncologist.
Correct.
You know, if you just have, if you have general, like, I don't feel great mentally, that's just like a general psychotherapist, just like you just go get a physical from a general practitioner. So just, find the person that's right. And I was talking to Dan Moyer in last episode about finding somebody that you like. And by like, I don't mean that is telling you everything that you want to hear, but somebody that you feel like you can open up to.
And that's going to hold you accountable for you. And like, I know, like, man, it took me 4 sessions to be truthful in my therapy session because I was in such a state of denial, and she already saw through me, and when I finally, told her the truth that I was just like, I need to get out. Like, I'm trying to leave, she was like, there she is. You know what I mean? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Like,
so, I just wanted to say that real quick. So look, you wanted to go back to.
Yes. Yeah. And a disclaimer too, like I am not a licensed psychotherapist, psychologist, mental health professional. I am just a certified narcissistic abuse educator. So that is my role.
I think you're sticking to it pretty well. You're answering, giving me some good information.
Yes.
So you said that you wanted to go back to the question that I asked, and I wanted to say that before.
That's okay. ADHD.
Absolutely.
So when I first left in 2018, so we had just had, I went from, so he had, when we first got together, he was already married. He actually had 3 children. He had a stepchild and then 2 daughters. And I didn't know that he was married whenever we got together. He wasn't living with her. He was living in a friend's house where somehow we mutually met because I was living with a friend at that time. And things just happened like super freaking fast. I mean, like within 7 months, I was married and pregnant and moving to another country.
Wow.
Yep.
So his divorce went really quick as well.
Absolutely. Yep. He was like saying that he had already filed and he like showed me the paperwork, but he hadn't like went and filed the paperwork is what I meant. And, making her out, she's crazy, she's bipolar, which is very, very common, in narcissistic, relationships. They will always talk about their exes that way. And this is a part of what is called triangulation. This is the drama triangle where they will play the persecutor, the rescuer, the victim, the persecutor, rescuer, the victim. And it always interchanges whichever role they want to be in, whichever serves them in that moment. So there, he was playing both. He was admitting to ways that he had abused her and then talked about how they were abusive to each other. And it's amazing the things that he would tell me that like none of it was like a red flag for me, because in my mind as an empath, I was like, oh, look at him. He's taking accountability. He's wanting to do better. He's not going to cheat on his wife with the neighbor. Like,
Okay. Like, let me ask you, how much of that do you think has to do with your autism?
Oh, a huge amount.
Do you think if
Huge
you had
amount.
had an earlier diagnosis, you might have been more aware not to trust what every person says at face value?
I was very, very, very naive and very vulnerable. And two, because of the relationship with my mom, like that was used as a weapon because I'm an only child too. So I only have just me and my parents.
Yeah.
And so I think too, with delayed processing, and with conversations with narcissists when things happen so fast. And then when you're also in a state of survival, like I yearned for that type of love. I just wanted to be loved. I mean, I looked for relationships with other people's mothers because I didn't have that with my own either. And so, I entered into relationships that were also narcissistic and chaotic and dysfunction because that's what I knew. I was taught to associate love with abuse.
Yeah.
And this is because I love you. This hurts me more than it hurts you. And
with being on the spectrum, you feel like you internalize those things even further.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you think that being on the spectrum kind of makes you the perfect victim for narcissistic abuse?
I think that this question has came up before, and Latricia and I were talking about it in our podcast. Because there's a lot of like mental health professionals that I have seen use this, and they'll say, you got to work on like what attracted you to that person, so you can stop attracting people. And I feel like that's a very thin line that we have to be so careful with because that can be associated with victim blaming.
Yeah.
And so while I do feel like it's important to take responsibility for your healing journey and notice things that are not serving you, I don't ever want to let victims and survivors think that there's something within them that attracted them to an abuser, because abusers are perpetrators. They are predators. And so they know exactly what they're looking for.
So I think that for me, maybe it's less about what attracted them to you, because that feels very blamey to me.
Yeah.
But more what attracted you to them. Like, I feel like that distinction is very important because there are some pretty strong signals that are given early on that, kind of like alpha male behavior that a lot of women can be attracted to, that if you're not careful and what you're actually looking for, you're looking for abuse signals.
Well, and that's a part of like the nervous system being conditioned to associate that with love.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is not a fault of your own. That's a fault of your childhood upbringing of not having a secure attachment style. So it's very disorganized. Your nervous system is searching for that release of dopamine and cortisol. Where's the highs and lows? Okay, he's talking shit to me one day, and the next day, I love you so much. So those are those little doses of niceness and breadcrumbs and leaving you a little trail to keep you on the edge of hope. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so when we first got together, there wasn't any signs like that. Within the first couple months, the signs that I see now, I didn't see them because they were so subtle, but yet so obvious at the same time. Like I have, Facebook messages from when we first got together, and because my Facebook or his Facebook used to be my Facebook, but he coerced me to create a joint account within the first month we were together.
I'm sorry, that seems like a pretty obvious
but in my mind, I'm like, he's so caring. He just wants to be with me. Yes. No. Future self is like, girl, run for the hills.
And so like I definitely don't ever want to victim blame. Like you, I'm so sad for you then, but I want to encourage people to know better so that doesn't happen.
That's why we're having these conversations.
Yeah, and so like it's so hard to like say that wasn't obvious, but also say, like, I understand that you didn't see it at that time.
Yeah. I wasn't in a conscious state of mind.
Yeah, that's,
like when you're in a state of unconsciousness, like when most people say, like I had an attorney say to me, yeah, but you did know better. And I'm like, but I didn't, because if I did, I would have done differently. So I was doing the best with the information that I had at the time. And I didn't have the wisdom and the educational tools to know better. So to say that is really invalidating, because no one that's in a conscious state of mind would actively choose that.
Let me add something to that, because I think it's really important to say that, everybody says know better, do better. I believe that, but also as a neurodivergent, that's not necessarily true.
No.
Executive function is a real thing, and my ability to know better and to do better do not always connect.
No.
Like I want to say that if I know better, I'm gonna do better. I promise. Like I'll say that, and often I do, but when I don't, I have to have grace for myself, and I ask it from the people who love me as well. But it's important for me to understand that I'm not always going to do better.
Yeah.
But that's also part of knowing better and doing better, is like having grace for myself, because I know that just because I know better, I'm not necessarily going to automatically do better. It takes a lot of
repetition.
Practice.
Yeah. Yeah. But like when you're talking about abusers, though, like the difference between like apologies is like the person is validating your emotions. They're taking accountability for the ways that they've hurt you. And it's not, their apologies aren't self-serving, which with narcissists, when they apologize, it's, I'm sorry, I'm such a piece of shit. I'm sorry, I just can't do anything right. It's never about you. It's never about the ways they've hurt you. They're sorry that they got caught. It's that way. The victim is the one that is consoling the abuser. And that is so wild. Like one day I was sitting on the couch and he came and just slapped me in my face and thought it was like funny. And because he had a very sadistic way of like playing and always wanted to like play fight and things like that. And I've already had set boundaries of like, I don't do that. And I don't play like that. It's not fun for me. And that turned into literally a 3-hour conversation, and where we just went in circles, and it just became like, you just hold on to everything. You just hold on to all of my past, and you just can't see me for who I am today. And I'm like, but that's a part of keeping you in that cycle, because they want you to have an emotional reaction so they can be like, look at how you're acting. And I have voice recordings of that, of him literally saying, wow, look at how you're acting right now. And I'm like, how am I acting? And he's like, you're being so loud. And I'm like, I'm literally talking to you. And like, it makes you feel crazy, but that's the point.
Yeah.
They want you to feel crazy. They want you to feel like you're the one that's in the wrong, that they're not. That's what gaslighting is, to make you think that everything you've experienced didn't happen. Like, he could go from admitting that he did something one day and the next week, what are you talking about? Yeah. That never happened. And you're like, we just had a conversation about it. He's like, I don't remember that. And I'm like, what?
Here's something I struggle with is I do that all the time with ADHD too. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'll say that, yeah, that makes sense. I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah.
And then we'll have another conversation about something similar. I'm like, I don't remember saying that.
That's different.
I know that it's different, but I want to ask, how much grace do you think you should give your past narcissistic abuser? Like, do you think they deserve? I mean, everybody deserves forgiveness in yourself, but like, does he deserve actual active forgiveness?
That's a hard conversation. Yeah. That is. I think I've really struggled with that, because one thing with forgiveness is that I've learned, it's not for you, it's for me. Because, and I feel like it has to be a choice. And I think that people should choose to do what feels good for them. I do feel like, acts of unforgiveness, not for the person, but for yourself. Okay. Acts of, like, when you're not forgiving yourself, that's more detrimental to your health than anything.
Yeah, it's holding you back.
It is. And like, I feel like it's also a part of like allowing the other person to still have like control. And I don't want any part in that. I deserve to be free from that, and I deserve to like break those chains and allow myself to fully just be loved in the ways that I'm deserving of. And like, I don't need an apology from you, and I don't need to.
But as a full-on NPD, do you think that he ever had a choice to be somebody different?
I do. I think that, well, it's really, really hard to dissect those because it's a family system. Okay. His mother is very narcissistic. She's very, very psychologically abusive. And not just with him as a child, from what I know, but with me, with our children as well, very manipulative. And a lot of narcissistic mothers that have boys have a very emotional incest relationship with their sons. It's an enmeshment. So they kind of like look to their sons as like, it's their job to fulfill emotions for them, regulate, especially if they're single moms. They might dress their boys in ways that they would see grown men dress or, whatever, putting them in modeling, like fulfilling those roles. And so again, everything comes back to her and how the child is serving her needs. And when you don't serve those needs, then you're rejected, you're given the silent treatment, you're isolated. And so for him, I spent a lot of our relationship like trying to justify his abuse.
Yeah.
And that's grace and compassion and hope, because those little glimpses of love bombing or doses of niceness, that's what kept me staying, because I'm like, oh, there he is. But I kept trying to see him for something that he wasn't. And that's how you get trapped very early on, is the love bombing. They're everything that you could ever want. They're opening car doors. They're taking you out on dates. They're loving you and giving you affection and all of these things. And then
they're saying all the right things.
Very and so, man, and then when you get in it, it's the complete opposite. And then it's like, who was it? So for me, when I was in a whole nother country, completely isolated, like, what was I going to do? I don't have any friends there. I don't know anyone, I only have a cell phone at that time. You know what I mean? And so, you were talking about childhood. So there's a soul splitting that occurs. Like, this kind of applies to Tesla's like 369. Okay. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
The Nikola Tesla. Like,
yes.
I was not. So it was like the car. What?
Yeah. It's like, so there's different developmental stages that happen, like not only on a neurological level, but on spiritual level, like as you develop as a child. And like attachment styles, like, 0 to 3 months is a very important stage of where the child learns that they have a safe connection. When they cry, are their needs getting met? Or are they cry it out method? Are they being left alone? So then they learn not to cry, things like that. And so a soul splitting can occur, and it usually happens around the age of like between like 7 and 9 is really when a child starts developing like their sense of self, who they are, trying to form their own identity outside of their parents. Well, when you have a narcissist as a parent, you are an extension of them. You are not yourself. You're not allowed to be yourself. You're not allowed to have your own identity because you are an extension of them. And you have to be and do and say and act how they want you to act. And if you're not those things, well, then I'm going to reject you. And if you don't fulfill those needs for me, I'm going to reject you. So it's all a cycle of, I love you when you do the things that I want, and then I reject you when you do the things that are not what I want. So it's a cycle of rejection, abandonment, love, And so I think,
you said as a child, if you are the child of a narcissist, which I'm increasingly sure that I am,
yeah,
you will find that doesn't stop just because you're an adult.
No.
My last conversation with my mother was, she was very, very, very upset at me because I wouldn't vaccinate our kids against COVID. And I told her, like, hey, we're going to have stuff that we disagree on and need to be able to move on.
Yeah.
Because, I don't want this to be what defines our relationship. And she started yelling at me, and I was like, we always do this. We always, make everything about you. Like, and she's like, oh, now you're going to start talking about how crappy your childhood was. And, she just was really upset. And then she said, if I could change anything about you, I would change. And that crushed me. Your mom's supposed to love you unconditionally. Like, of course we say things and, that we don't necessarily mean, but thinking of saying it's okay to change your child. Like, I remember what she said because I shut down at that moment. It was like, I can't do this with you anymore. And she screamed some more and she hung up on me. Then she attempted suicide that night.
Wow. Which is very common.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like,
it is very common.
Lines right up. And told my stepfather that it was, she just mixed up her medication. She is also, she has autoimmune disease. She has fibromyalgia. So she takes a lot of medication. So it's believable, but I know for a fact that it was a stunt. And then she wouldn't talk to me afterwards. Like, I tried to reach out, gave it to me for 3 months, and then reached out on the weekend. It was my daughter's birthday, Easter, and I keep forgetting there was another big thing happening. That's the weekend she decides to text and is like, I would like to try to start, re-entering this relationship. And I'm like, convenient. There's a bunch of stuff happening about other people, and now's the time that you want to reach out. And no, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll pass.
For you, man.
It sucks.
It's hard.
It's very hard to cut somebody who's been such a big part of your life out because of the amount of toxicity they bring to the relationship. And, that's
a whole thing. And I want to really commend you for that because it's a lonely road. It's a lonely road. And I think that, I don't know why that made me emotional.
It was emotional for me too.
Yeah,
I can talk about it now.
People don't understand, like, when you have to make an active choice to, like, remove someone from your life that you love so dearly and you want so bad to have a connection with them. And that's one of the hardest, but yet bravest choices that you have to make because it's about you and you're choosing you. And people always use, like, the loyalty thing, but their family, but their blood, but their family, but their blood. And it's like, that is never an excuse to tolerate mistreatment. But that has become the staple in our society, especially in religious indoctrination, but it's your mom and you got to respect your elders and you got to do this. And it's like, no, you don't have to respect anyone that is mistreating you. No. And that is why that's how people end up in these abusive relationships so easy too, is because that's how we're conditioned as a society, like from day one, to tolerate mistreatment because people are older than us. It's like, Matilda, I'm big, you're small, you're right, you're wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so you're always made to feel so small, even through adulthood. That inner you is like, I can't do anything. I can't think of, I got to tolerate this because she's my mom.
And what I agree with about religion is that your elders do deserve respect.
Yeah.
They just, it's like, it's an exhaustible thing.
Yeah.
It's something that is not infinite. You don't get infinite respect. I'm going to approach you with respect because you're an elder. I'm going to respect you because you're mom. I'm going to listen to you and, try to take your advice in and give it a higher amount of weight than other people's until you show me that you don't deserve that.
Yeah.
And as you continue to show me that you don't deserve that, you get less and less of my respect.
Right.
It's not perpetual.
No.
And that's where I feel like that toxicity of religion is often, what like held up is that they want to say, no, you need to keep respecting them as if they've done something to earn that respect.
Correct. And even in like relationships when you do marriage, because I stayed in my relationship for so long and went back because of a lot of that religious indoctrination. I don't want to have separate my house, and I don't want my kids to grow up without a father, and like all these things. And then, like even when I was like seeing somebody else during the time we were separated, we were still married, and this was the first time I was trying to leave. He had already been having affairs, and like that was very common because one thing they'll do as well is like they'll have an affair and then not even tell you until 2 years later. Well, then what are you going to do about it? Oh, I'm sorry, and I changed, and and he had a porn addiction and all this stuff, and like I guilted myself for so long for also having an affair during that time. And I had to keep it a secret because obviously I was trying to leave. And secondly, like I already knew that he was having an affair. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so, but I had such extreme guilt because I was like, this goes against every moral and value that I have. I've never cheated on anyone in my life. But I'm like, but I deserve to feel unconditional love. I deserve to be treated with kindness, and that's what I was getting. And so whenever I left and I experienced unconditional love, safety, joy, gentleness, ease, I knew that was possible. But because my nervous system was so addicted to dysfunction and chaos, he felt like, what is this?
Yeah.
Where's the chaos? Where's the dopamine?
So, like, I'm going to push back just a little bit because, like, I believe the institution of marriage is something that is holy and is to be respected. But I don't think that means that you can't leave and that you can't start over. Like, like I've been unfaithful to my wife.
Yeah.
And it is the worst thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I wish everything I could take it back. But she stayed with me and we've worked on rebuilding our relationship. And that's something that is really important to me. But there were certain things I wasn't getting. Mm-hmm. Even if it wasn't my fault, I don't think it's okay to go outside of your marriage to try to find that validation until you are actually going outside of it, until you're ready to leave that marriage.
Yeah.
And I think that because of the ability to, the acceptance of like, well, I deserve this. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it leads you to just stay in the marriage while you go seek that thing. And I think that's worse. Yeah. I think it's worse for you. It's worse for the person who's the other, who can't get all of you. They can never get all of you because you still belong to somebody else, especially to him, you belong to him. So how can you ever really give yourself to someone else whenever he owns you and he's going to keep acting like it. Mm-hmm. And to me, like in my marriage, I gave myself to my wife. Mm. So I do belong to her. Mm. She gave herself to me. But it doesn't mean that I exercise ownership over her. It's that I am hers. That's a decision I made. It's not something that she exerts over me. So yeah, I stick with that. Like I belong to somebody else. So how am I going to, engage in a relationship to any sort of like fullness whenever I still belong to somebody else? Like I need to make the decision to leave. And that's a very brave and hard decision. Mm-hmm. But I think that you should try to seek happiness while you're going through that. But I think if you were engaging in another relationship, it disrespects the institution of marriage. And maybe that's okay with you. But for me, that's something that is,
Well, I don't ever think that it's okay. It wasn't something that I was actively seeking.
Yeah.
Like it was a high school friendship, and her and I had always just remained friends, and so this was something that was built on like decades of friendship and literally just happened out of nowhere, through conversation, through talking for hours and hours and hours, and just developed a connection. And, I was already so emotionally tapped out as well. Like I had, I went from having one child to 4 in a month. His older children came to live with us, and
how old were they?
Well, they had came and lived with us on and off, but, I had pretty much known and raised them since they were 6 and 7.
Mm-hmm.
And they came in 2015. So the same month that I had my second child, I went from being a parent to 1 to 4, and with no help. Like, I was a single parent in a 2-parent household.
Wow.
And, like, my ex-husband never had went to a doctor's appointment, had never been to anything, never been to a parent-teacher conference, never been to an IEP meeting, like, never been involved in anything like that. I'm having a baby wrapped around me doing the dishes, vacuuming while he's playing video games, and so we were an inconvenience for him. And he, like, verbally said that, like, in therapy. And I remember when I was going to have my hysterectomy, I had a lot of complications because I bled for like 6 months straight after. So we had to have an ablation done. And then I had a hysterectomy because my uterus was completely retroverted, which means it was laying flat. It was 90% flat. So it was causing a lot of pain and hip pain. And then I ended up having cysts on my ovaries. And so I ended up having a hysterectomy. And so that was the 3rd time that I had been completely cut open, because I had 2 C-sections prior to that.
Wow.
And I was sitting in the bathtub, and this was the night before my surgery. And he came in and he was like, "I hope you're not going to come home and be a fucking bitch." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, I've been talking to everybody about work, or talking to everybody at work about your surgery. And I heard that your hormones are going to change a whole bunch." And he was like, "You better not come home and think that you're just going to be a bitch." And I was like, "What?"
Wow.
And like, then he started talking about sex drive, and like, we were already having, complications, because half of the time it was spousal rape, which I didn't know that at the time. And so I thought that me laying in the bed crying, was okay. Even though my body felt like
That's not okay.
It's not okay.
It's not okay.
And when you say no is a complete sentence, and it's not okay.
Wow.
And that was really hard, because I didn't even have that type of knowledge that was even a thing until I was at the domestic violence shelter. And they had to explain that. And I just remember crying, because it was just like a flash flood of every single time that had happened. I had to acknowledge that that's what it was. And I just didn't want to.
This is like, it's a very deep and vulnerable thing. And thank you for sharing that, first off. But I want to know, like, do you think, one, you were able to survive that better because of the ability to dissociate with your autism? And also, do you feel like it was harder for you to understand that wasn't okay because of the difficulty in picking up that, like, quote unquote, normal social behavior?
I think both of that. I think as a child, when I was being abused by my mother, I would disassociate. I would find my happy place.
Was this physical or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And so when that was occurring, I just remember laying there and thinking of anything that I could. I would think of waking up on a Saturday, being in elementary, and I knew it was Saturday because my dad was up early mowing the lawn, and I could hear the lawnmower come by my window, and I'd immediately get up and grab a popsicle and go sit outside with him. So like, I would always have these like very just real memories like come up for me, and I would just, and the next thing you know, it was over. And then he gets up.
You go to your happy place.
Mm-hmm. Next thing, he gets up and goes plays the video game, and then acts like nothing ever happened. And so, and it wasn't always like that. There was majority, a lot of our times was absolutely consensual, but at any time, if I said no or stop, or times I didn't want to, or if he's trying to wake me up in the middle of the night and I say no, like, that wasn't allowed, and then if he didn't do it, then I mean, I would be given the silent treatment for a week, and I would be threatened that I just need to find somebody else because I need a freak, and I was always being compared to porn stars, and my body was always being compared to like Alexis Texas and, like all of these. I mean, when we got together, he had literally 2 stacks of burnt CDs that were porn, and would openly watch it in front of me and always threaten to leave, which is a very common thing. They will belittle you. They will nitpick at you. And if your life doesn't revolve around them, they will threaten to leave you. I just need to find somebody else, because that way you're like, no, like, I'm sorry, like apologizing for their behavior.
Was that the first sexual assault that you dealt with was with him, or
No?
when was the first time?
The first, I have been sexually assaulted in high school. But then the one that like stands out to me was actually by my ex-boyfriend that I dated for 3 years in high school. And this was like a year after we had broken up, and he was also a narcissist, which I didn't know that.
Right.
And I mean, I have journal entries from the time that we were together from high school, and it just broke my heart reading those last year. I hadn't read my journal in like years, and just seeing the push and pull, and it was a year after, and I had went to a party, and I was actually dating someone at that time. And that was the first relationship that I had ever experienced that was not abusive. Like, it was one of the most amazing relationships. Felt like it was like years, but it was only 8 months.
Yeah.
And it was just incredible. And he had went out of town, and I went to a party, and he was there. And, I had no intention on talking to him. Like, in fact, it was like the complete opposite, like I didn't really want to be around him, but he, very grandiose, very likable. We had music in common. He was, a rapper, and we always connected through music. And he was like a really great lyricist. He was super funny. And, and then it just became like, hey, like, do you want to come back to my house? Like, we can like talk and things like that, and I was like, no, and then it's very persuasive and like, no, like, for real, like, I just want to talk to you about music, doing a song together. And then, the house was just like right down the street from where he lives. And so, I went, and more alcohol was involved. And I remember I told him, I said, I just want to go to sleep. And I wanted to lay on the couch, and he just kept insisting, no, like, I'll go lay on the couch. You can lay in my bed. And then next thing you know, like, he's just on top of me, and I am so intoxicated that I can't move. And I just remember like tears rolling down my face and me asking him to stop. And he's just like whispering, it's okay. And then I wake up the next morning, and I had like bruises in between my legs. And I remember calling, there was a police officer that we grew up in junior high with, and I called him because I didn't know what to do. And I was scared to report it, because immediately after I had asked him what happened, and he was like saying that we had sex. And I was like, no, like, that's not what happened. And he was like, well, no one's going to believe you. And it just continued. And so I was really scared. And then plus I had, and this even was with my ex-husband, because I already knew the way that society had demonized Black men over decades. They're animals, they're violent, they're all of these things. And then I felt guilt, like, oh God, like, if I report what happened, what's going to happen to him? And he's going to lose his job. And then like all of that mindset.
You were worried about, equal reciprocity. Him. Like, I mean, which is a valid thing to think at any time.
Right.
Does he deserve to, possibly get killed because the police come to a situation?
Yeah.
Maybe not. But that wasn't your problem.
It wasn't. And I carried that for so long. And he was like, I can't force you to do anything. He said, but I would encourage you to file a report, But now, that I've done so much research around these cases and stuff, I mean, it's very hard to get accountability, even with that. You know what I mean? There's majority of rape cases like get so backlogged, and the same with reporting violence. Whenever I tried to leave last year, the day that I left, he had already been out of town that weekend and was at his new supplies house, which is a new old supply. He had been having an affair with this lady for like 3 years. And I didn't know that's where he was. And I just like had a hunch if I had heard him talking to her on the phone. And I was trying to remove the remainder of my stuff out of the house. I had already made it known that I was leaving because he had actually came to me in December and was trying to play that game because I had stopped seeing my therapist for like 3 months. Let me backtrack. That summer of 2021, he had deployed for 4 months, was supposed to be gone for 4 months. Mm-hmm. And it's like when he left, the veil just like lifted and like the energy in the house shifted. Like kids were coming out of their rooms. Like, I mean, it was just like we could breathe, like we weren't suffocated. And I was able to think for myself and have clarity. And I was just like, oh my God, I stayed. I'm back, and it was just like, and I remember telling him that I wanted to leave and things like that. So I was like trying to get my shit together. And that's when the love bombing started. He was mirroring my behavior, like saying things like, oh, I can't believe that I can love again. And I'm meditating and I ordered this book off of Amazon and all of the right things. And I was really trying hard to stay in my boundaries of like, that's not my responsibility. Like, I love you, and I really want that for you. Like, you deserve, and I was being super supportive in that because he was so believable. I mean, just like affirming me, giving me affirmations, like all different types of things. And you're such a great mother, not just to our kids, but, to my older girls. And like, you do everything and like all of these things, like everything that you would want to hear, like as a spouse, just like, and then he threatened to kill himself. That was the second time that had happened. And he told the military that he wanted to take his roommate's gun and shoot himself in the head. So his roommate had to go tell the supervisor. And he was sent home early. He was supposed to be gone for 2 months. And I just remember my world shattered. Like, what am I going to do now? Like, now he's coming back. And so he literally had bought like a trip to Disney World and all of these things, trying to get me to stay, like mowed the word love in the backyard. Like, bought us bicycles. Like, we went on bike rides and tried to get back in with my therapist because we had actually had 2 previous therapy sessions. And one was a family session, which the children were involved in. And that was awful. Like, all of the children were in tears immediately. They were terrified to speak in front of him. And they had to go to separate rooms to talk to her. He was very honest that he didn't want his effing kids. He didn't want this life. He just wants to bodybuild and play video games, and that we're an inconvenience. And she was trying to get him to understand how the children were feeling. Like, do you understand that, hurt, he was not there for it. Like, the kids were in the room and he was like watching his PlayStation games on his phone. Oh, and so that was really devastating. And then we had another session, and that's when he was like, yeah, like, I want to go to therapy session with you. And then we went, and it was like total opposite. He was saying like the same things. And I think that was a hard awakening for me because she was like repeating to me what he was saying. And I didn't want to hear it. So I was like making excuses and I was in denial. And I was like, yeah, but. And she's like, Maralen, this is what he's saying. And I need you to hear what he's saying.
Yeah.
And because someone saw him and was repeating his own words back, he did not like that. And that upset him like really, really bad. And so that turned into, did you see how she treated me in there? And she was attacking me and like all of these things. And she was so incredibly validating, like, because, you know, she shared her own story and she was like, you know, I was also raised by a narcissist. And she said, and I developed narcissistic traits as a mother. She said, and it took my son committing suicide for me to wake up. You know what I'm saying? And she was like, you know, no one is attacking you. Like we are trying to bring healing and like validating your children's pain and getting them to understand like this is what's happening. And so, you know, he had messaged the therapist when he came home and was like, hey, like I really want to. She didn't respond, you know, because that's not her client. And I didn't see my therapist for 3 months because. And I was accepting of that because she wouldn't see us as a family because, you know, she can't. And as a mandated reporter, you know, like she can't encourage you to stay with an abuser. And I was just like, I completely understand, you know, if you have any other people that you can recommend, you know. And so I didn't see a therapist for 3 months. Yeah. And then my daughter and I were watching The Maid on Netflix. And it was in that moment, this was in October, I was like, oh my God, I stayed again, like just within a couple months, you know, I was like rehooked all over again, saying, doing all the right things. I mean, this was the longest that he had ever kept it up. It was like 3 months he kept up that facade, vacuuming the house, like doing the like basic responsibilities, like yeah. But he wants a thank you. Like you walk in the house and he, like, if you don't say anything, did you see what I did? The dishes? Like, yeah, like, well, we all eat, like we all do the dishes, like, except for you. You know what I mean? Like this has been a thing for years. But he wants recognition all of the time for like doing basic things. And in December, he had came to me, and at that time I had already, I messaged my therapist. I was like, please take me back. And she was like, you know, I will absolutely, you know, take you back. And we can just have a session to see if I'm still a good fit for you. And I'm like, you've always been a good fit, you know. And we started developing a safety exit plan. And, you know, she had to tell me, like, lean into your health during this time, you know, like, to prevent any like physical contact with him, you know, like sexual engagements and things like that. Like that you have a migraine, you know what I mean? Just to do anything to get him to leave you alone, you know, and you have to like play the game, you know, you have to pretend that everything is okay and like, I love you. And that was so hard for me because I couldn't do that. Like it was so disgusting for me because it wasn't genuine. And then plus the more clarity I had and the more I learned to trust my intuition, the more knowledge I had of manipulation, that I was being the observer in the conversations and I could actually like see the word salad happening and stuff. I was just like, wow, like I've literally sat here for 2 hours and like listen to these conversations that go nowhere. Like, what are we talking about? Yeah. 1 minute we're talking about how can we budget, and then the next minute because Trump is president, Maralen, and I'm like, what does that have to do with us budgeting? Like, you know? Yeah. And he came to me and was like, I don't think we need to be together anymore. And at that time, I couldn't fake it anymore. And I couldn't. Like, I tried so hard because I was saving money. I was developing a plan. I had already been looking for places, like not telling him. I had slowly been moving things out of the house and putting it into my friend's storage. Mm. And he did not like that. I wasn't supposed to agree with him. I was supposed to beg for him to stay. And, I had recorded that conversation because I had started recording our conversations because when you've been gaslighted for so long, you don't believe yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so listening back to these conversations was like, oh my God, and so as soon as he would come into a room, I would press record. And he physically got on top of me and pushed his head down onto my forehead into the mattress. And he was like, you're going to effing leave me. And he was like, tell me, Maralen, tell me you don't want to be together. And I was just like, how can I say anything when you're just purposely intimidating me? And my body was shaking. And I told myself, I will never let this man see me cry again. And I wanted to so bad because I was terrified. Yeah. And then he just further gaslighted and was like, well, then you need to get the F out of the house and all of that. And I'm like, I really started to speak up for myself, which was really dangerous.
Yeah.
Very dangerous, and having boundaries, because narcissists do not respect boundaries. And they have to have access to you 24/7 because you are their property. And I was like, I'm not leaving this house. And if you have a problem with that, then you can leave, because I am not uprooting me and my 4 children. And that's not going to happen. And it was very empowering for me to find my voice, because I've never had a voice. I've never been able to speak up for myself. I've always been the people pleaser and even trying to befriend bullies, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because I just don't understand why we have to not get along, And that was one of the most empowering moments for me, is to say, no, if you have a problem with this, then you can leave. And I knew at that time that I needed help. And I knew that if I didn't publicly expose him, because I had tried to call his ex-supervisor, the base chaplain, to get help. And no one was doing anything. Yeah. And so I didn't know what to do. And I was like, I have to publicly ask for help so that way I can get out. And that's exactly what I did. And so I took a risk to expose him and ask for financial help. A previous friend of mine during that time had made a GoFundMe for me and my children. I had people that gave me donations through Cash App and Venmo and furniture sets. You know what I'm saying? Literally, once I stood in alignment, everything came for me after that. And the weekend that he came home, I had already moved all of our stuff out, the majority of our stuff, and I moved the kids' beds and everything. And when he saw that the kids' beds were moved, he was already irritated when he came home, and he was just erratic. And where are the effing mattresses? Those are my beds. I bought them. I'm like, they're not yours. They're the children's. And he called the police on me in front of our children. Wow. He told the police that I didn't even live there, that he came home to find his ex-wife in his home stealing his property. And so the police showed up. I removed the kids from the house, and that was very traumatic as well. My 6-year-old is screaming and crying because he's yelling and berating, and he blocked one of my daughters. She was driving my car because he took my car away. And I said, you need to take them to my mom's house, take them to safety, get them out. And he was trying to get her to stay, saying that she was a character witness. And, so the police came, and I went across the street and sat in the neighbor's parking lot. And I just sat there because I didn't want to be near him. Mm-hmm. And, he's waving his hands in the air, and you can hear him from across the street, and she stole this and all this stuff. And then they came and talked to me, and I told him, I said, I am trying to leave a violent relationship. He has abused me and my children for 12 years. I am trying to get the rest of my things out. And they said, well, we're just here for property, and we need you to return the mattress. And then told me that if I needed to call for help if I wanted someone to help me get my things, that I need to call the sheriff's office to have them come out and do a standby. Well, come to find out, you have to schedule to do a standby. So it's not even like that they could have came out that day.
Right.
So I told the police officers and they left me there alone with my abuser. And so I had friends that came later and helped me move. And I had, that entire day recorded. He did the opposite of what the police did. He put all my belongings out on the front porch and kept asking, are you going to have your effing friends come help me get your stuff? And my two friends came. I asked him to stay inside of the house. He didn't want to stay inside. He came outside of the garage and was like smacking the light, making fat shaming comments to her, like, smacking his fist together. And it started to escalate. And then he called someone that I now know is his coworker and was like, I'm about to smash on these mother effers. It's about to get crazy. And I called the police. I called 911. And I mean, while I was on the phone with dispatch, it was such a short time. The other person's back was turned and they were headed to the car and putting my belongings in the car. And he tried to attack him from behind. Mm. And the other guy just turned around and picked him up and body slammed him on the ground. And so my ex had a huge gash on the back of his head. Like he didn't further go at him, like literally, like it was just immediate, like self-defense of like, I have to put you down. You know what I mean?
That's why I move on.
Correct. And I was still on dispatch that entire time until the police arrived. And like his first response whenever he came to, like, I mean, it was so horrific because he started bleeding really bad. My oldest daughter came outside, like, and I don't care like what you've done to me. Like I have a very intolerant for pain, seeing people in pain. And like, it was horrific. And I ain't let nobody pick me up. That was his first response. And then he was, who hit me in my head? And, and so like, it turned into that. And then the next day, I moved out the rest of my stuff that evening. And the next day I went to Palomar, to try to get help and file my first DHS report, which was screened out. And then the day after that, I went to Women's Resource Center to file a VPO, and he had already filed one on me. Oh, gosh. And so we can definitely get into that later on for a second half. But yeah, that turned into a wild ride. And here we are almost 2 years later, still in court litigations and proceedings. And it's been almost 2 years and I have still not presented any evidence in court.
Wow. So that's definitely a situation stacked against you being able to leave and get what you need. I've got a spider on my mic.
There's a spider. Oh, it's a jumping spider. Can I get it?
Of course, yeah, go for it.
Like last time, like we're so distracted. Oh my God, we secured the spider.
Thank you so much for doing that, because I don't know anything about spiders and I assume they're all going to kill me. But I wasn't like, I don't want to kill them. Like, I know that they're very helpful to the environment. So,
well, I just love jumping spiders, and this has been a new thing because I used to be terrified of spiders, but like the last 2 years, jumping spiders, and I will spend like 30 minutes like, beat my friend. Sorry, yes, I know we ran over, but
so I don't want to end there. Like, there's a couple more things, because I know that you are so much more than just your survival story, and it's a very important part of who you are. But I also want to talk about just a couple other things. Try to keep it like maybe 15 minutes total.
Okay.
So something we touched on briefly in our previous conversation is your struggle to just hang out with people who share your passion.
Yeah.
Like, but it's been a struggle because there's a certain perception put on you as a woman that you can't just hang out with men.
Yeah.
Can you talk some more about that?
I think like for women, like it is really challenging to find platonic relationships with men. And I've only had a couple. So it's been very slim because like a lot of men that I literally thought were my friends and like I really loved and valued, at the end of the day, were always just looking for sex for me. Mm-hmm. And like that was devastating. And it's like they would make inappropriate comments and sexualize my body. And it's like I would excuse it and like, oh, they're just joking, and I tolerated it because I wanted to like hold on to that friendship. You know what I mean?
Do you feel like that was increased by neurodiversity? Like having someone see so much of you that you appreciated, but then excusing that other part because you just wanted to have that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just being so vulnerable and like naive a lot of times as well, like and trying to believe when people say like they're just kidding, or you know what I mean, like whatever. But then like when it's reoccurring, you know what I mean? And women, I think, are ingrained to like tolerate that too, because it's like, you know, we're taught that if you're wearing anything, you're asking for it, or, you know, whatever. And it's like, that's another thing is like, that goes along with like abusers are predators, you know, and I don't believe that anything a woman does, like she's asking for it. I think that no is a complete sentence, and anything that is not consensual is rape. Like that is just very straightforward. Like you have to consent to anything that has to do with your body. And if you're not consenting to that, like it is rape, like hands down.
And consent can change at any time.
Right? Absolutely. You could be in the middle of intercourse, and if you say, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't want to do this anymore. And, you know, the men in my life have been very persuasive, like, but it's okay. And, you know, like trying to coerce you into staying in that moment. And that's where it's like, well, then I'm afraid. If I don't stay in this moment and if I do anything, is he going to get more forceful? Well, he's stronger than me. He's taller than me, you know, so all of these thoughts, so I'm just going to disassociate and I'm going to wait till it's over, you know, and then just like put it out of my mind, you know. And so when we talk about chakras, like, you know, women store a lot of trauma in their hips and in their sacral area because of a lot of sexual trauma, you know, and so doing a lot of womb work and stuff, you know, I've done for the last 2 years of just really like healing those things, you know, and releasing that. Like I don't have hip pain anymore. Even after I had my hysterectomy, you know, I intercourse was like super painful. Like, I mean, I always had painful intercourse, and that's one reason like I didn't like to have sex, because it hurt, you know.
We talked about this in our last episode, that like I like to try to strip away the ideology and take away the thing about that. And you were talking about, you know, body work and chakras, and like I haven't finished reading, but I've been reading this book about how your body holds trauma. It's by oh gosh, never mind. I'm not gonna remember who it's by.
Body Keeps Score?
No, it's not that one.
That's a good pick though.
But it just talks a lot about how if you have unresolved trauma, it is going to affect you physically. You are going to have pain. You are gonna it's going to hold your body back. So, you know, whether you look at it as chakra work and, you know, meditation and yoga and healing that way, or you look at it as mindfulness and, you know, or therapy or whatever, the ultimate thing is that no matter how you look at it, when you experience things, your body is experiencing those things, and there's going to be a residual effect. Like that's science.
Yeah.
So I just want, you know, I really want people to be able to understand that there is something to take away from anybody who has some sort of healing journey. Like I don't do, like I'm working on my yoga practices very, very beginning, but I want other people who don't believe in yoga at all to understand that the overarching theme that connects us all is that we all need to heal from our traumas.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you don't want to do yoga, you still need to take the idea that your body is holding on to the things that hurt you. So
yeah, and you can
find a
do
way
any
out from
type of like somatic movements are very important, like for trauma survivors, and you can do that through dancing or any type of somatic movements to just move the energy in the body. And like, with yoga, like that's a way of life. It's not just about stretching. It's about who you are to yourself, who you are to others, how you act. Mindfulness is a huge part of that. And that's one thing for me that I've really struggled with is when you're trying to reset the nervous system, you can't just jump into these big movements. And because like the fascia in our tissues is what surrounds the muscle, and it's the trauma is what gets stored in the fascia. So it's not our muscles itself that gets tight. It's the fascia around it that compact everything. Then you get shoulders to your ears, forehead, head posture, because you're trying to guard and protect your heart. You've always been in survival. And so learning to open up the chest and really expanding and doing these smaller but impactful movements to help regulate the nervous system is like so important for healing. And so I've had to really be gentle with myself because it is hard to look in the mirror and see like, God, I've lost a lot of muscle mass, but understanding that like, I can't just jump into going and, doing leg extensions and things like that because my nervous system has to rest and repair.
Yeah.
I have to get back to a parasympathetic state. My adrenal glands have to regulate. And that can take up to 3 years for your body to regulate itself. And so that in itself is a journey. My body didn't take overnight to develop these illnesses. So it's going to take years to heal from, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one day, I do hope to be able to like say, like, I don't have to be on disability anymore. I want to be, so financially abundant, where that's not something that I need. But I'm so grateful for the ways that it's serving me in this time and that it gives me the opportunity to rest and repair. And I know that like, it's more important for me of like, how do I feel?
Yeah.
Not about how I look right now, but how do I feel? Like, how is my body feeling? You know what I mean? Like,
how is it serving me? Is
yes.
it like, am I able to do the things I want
Correct.
to do?
Yes.
And even if the answer is no, that's okay.
It is.
It's just, noticing and staying with that.
Yeah.
Before we move too far away from that subject, so I'm coming from the other side. Like I have lost or destroyed a lot of relationships because I couldn't differentiate between being interested in someone and being attracted to them. And even today, I still struggle with the terminology. So you can be attracted to a personality. I'm a straight man. If that personality belongs to another straight man, it's safe, right?
Right.
But if I'm attracted to that personality and it belongs to a woman, whether she's straight or not, now it's a dangerous thing. And so like that thought is hard for me to wrap my mind around. So I've tried to focus on my intention and, being above board in the relationships that I'm trying to maintain and acting in a way that, is in alignment with my beliefs. And that's, I want to be able to I've always felt safer with women.
Yeah.
Being a black man is really easy to have people be intimidated by you and therefore treat you as if you don't deserve love.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've struggled with for a large part of my life. So women have always been more accepting to me, more accepting to me being emotional and talking about how I feel. And, whether I was always honest with those things, that's a more recent thing, but still that was really difficult for me. But, so the intention is to focusing on labels, but for a long time, I did have intention, like bad intention. I just lied to myself and everyone else about it. So like I wanted pretty girls to like me. I wanted validation from pretty women because that's what was much easier for me to get because I was never going to get it from the most powerful opinion for me at all times was white men.
Oh, wow.
Like, they're not going to give it to me, but that's, my mom used to tell a story about me when I was a little kid where I'd say, when I grow up, I want to be a white doctor. Like,
wow,
that to me is so telling of the influence that archetype had in my life.
Wow, yeah.
And whenever I didn't receive that at all, I went to the next best thing, and that was white women. And I did not have hardly any relationships with any black people at all, but especially not black women. White women were that was it. And it was easy because I didn't fit as a typical black guy, but I was still black, so I was exciting. And, I was well spoken, so I was acceptable. I was one of them enough, but not enough at the same time. So,
and there's so many white women that glorify black bodies, but they don't advocate for black communities. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's a thing to really like take stereotypes with black bodies and like, I want that. I want to experience that. But then discard. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I see that a lot.
Yeah. So for some reason, the gamification of my brain made the opinions of white women worth more. So it's like scoring points. Like I wanted to rack more of those up. And I was willing to like sacrifice whatever to get it. Like I would flirt with women while I was a married man. I would, I'd be more open to going farther in a conversation than was really safe. Because I thought, if I just did this, now they'll like me. I compliment their appearance, which is it's not what you do whenever you're a married man. Like if you find somebody interesting, that's one thing, but to be talking about women and how they look is objectification. And that's something that I didn't really, I didn't get the memo on for a long time. So have you ever felt like somebody else was using you to boost their own self-worth and the way that I kind of did whenever I was much unhealthier? And how did that affect you?
Can you repeat that again?
Did you feel like like I said, you being a white woman in that unhealthy state, your opinion would have been worth more to me. So I would have used you in a way to boost myself up. Did you ever feel like you were in those kinds of relationships, and how did that affect your identity?
Yeah, I was like labeled as like a snow bunny. Like, oh, I'm trying to tap that. I'm trying to hit that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think because of my body, the way that my body was shaped, like that was like more intriguing for men, as a white woman. And so it kind of became one of those things, where I want to experience that. Like I had a really close friend tell me one time, like, because I had kind of started developing like feelings for him. At least I thought I was, And I remember he told me, and it was a very honest answer, so I had to respect it, but it was also very hurtful because I was able to see, is this what our relationship is? And we had messed around like a decade, like we were really young. And we had always just like remained friends. And he had said, I'm scared to open that door because I am so sexually attracted to you. And he said, and I'm afraid that it's just that. And I was like, dang, that sucks, man. But like, thank you for being fucking honest. Like, I really do like appreciate that. But dang, like I thought we had so much more than that, like on a friendship level, like, because we would have like super deep conversations. And I had to think like, is this how you've always viewed me? And like, that's like really was a hard place to be in. And I think a part of one of my lessons, like it's been like this for like over a year now, is to surrender and let go. Let go of those attachments. Like let go. Like nobody belongs to you. You don't own anyone. You don't belong to anyone either. And it's an active choice you get to choose the energy that you want to be in and you want to be around. And there was like a book, God, I forget what it was called, but dang, I have to find it. But he was talking about the relationship with his wife, and he said, it might have even been the 4 agreements. I'm not for sure, but he was talking about how in relationships, like even with his wife, that he was like, I had to understand that she doesn't own me and vice versa. And that at any moment, if she was to come to me and say, I don't want this anymore and I don't feel connected to you in that way, I have to respect that because I don't own her and no one belongs to you. And I was like, wow. And that's really hard because I think too in our society, like you have this narrative of like, you just have to have one person for the rest of your life. And like, plus we're like so sexualized at a young age. 5 years old, you got a little boyfriend, you got a little girlfriend. And it's like, no, I'm coloring with crayons, And he was like, but he said, what an honor and a privilege it is to every day wake up and choose each other, so like to be grateful for that, like another day with her, another day that we have chosen to be in this love relationship with each other. I was like, that's really powerful. And I think it's just been a lesson for me to like release attachment because that's one of the biggest, I think, like not a setback, but can put you on like hold in the things that are actually meant for you and in alignment for you. And it can be a lack of progression and limit the ways that you're capable of like receiving love and having meaningful connections by being attached to everyone and everything. So having to release attachments, knowing that like, I can't take anyone or anything with me. And I don't want to have control over someone. And so how can I release that and say, wow, like, I love you so much. Like, thank you for this experience. Thank you for this season that you gave me. So really learning to like be grateful for the connections that I've had and really just sit and reflect on like, what did I learn from this? What is the wisdom that I can gain from this experience and release that attachment? Because if I become attached to everyone, that's codependency too. Yeah. And so I don't want to be codependent anymore. I want to have freedom and understand that people also have that same freedom from me. If you feel like that I am not contributing to your growth, or I'm not being the best friend that I could be to you, or we're on 2 different healing journeys and you need to disconnect from me, like, I love you and I support you and I don't take it personal. You know what I mean? Because like you're, again, also, it doesn't always have to be like a villain, but you are the villain in other people's stories. And you can also just have relationships where it's just the end of the season,
Yeah, I think the way that I look at that towards marriage specifically is that it's really so much about being present, being intentional, and like saying, I want to be in this daily cycle of choosing my wife. I want to be here. I need to be present and mindful of the fact that I'm choosing to be here. And I want to do the work to have a stronger connection. I don't think it should be like her constantly pushing me to stay or to be here or to be present or put in the work.
Right.
If it's not about you personally wanting to be there and wanting to do those things, maybe it's not right for you anymore. And that's what I hope for people. All right, one last question before we wrap it up.
Sure. I do want to say, because you made a comment. Go ahead and come in. I think one of the best decisions that you can make for yourself and for the collective is healing.
Yeah.
Doing the healing work. Like what a gift that is to the universe, and everyone around you is taking the time to say, I love myself and I love those around me. And so I'm going to do the work. I'm going to face my shadows. I'm going to dig deep, and I'm going to be raw and vulnerable and messy and like work on myself because I deserve that. And then once you do that, it's a ripple. It magnifies because everything is energy, And so I think that's really beautiful to be able to actively make that choice and come into awareness of healing and then choose that, because once you choose to do that, everything around you will start responding to that. And everything that isn't meant for you and that is not meant to go with you into the next chapter, like it'll start rolling off of your back like water, Absolutely. And you just got to let it go. Like Elsa said,
So I can't let the conversation end without something I promised in the intro.
Yeah.
And that's talking about your past lives.
Okay. Oh yeah.
So this is important for me to make a little bit of a preface, because I think as a facilitator of this show, it is really important for me to allow people to tell their stories.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that I'm going to identify with every story that's told.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious about this.
Yeah.
So it's something that is, might be a lot would consider woo-woo. I would even say it goes a little bit for me, but I'm curious to hear what the process is like. Let's just talk me through how you learned about this, what the first time was like, and what it entailed.
I'm still learning. I don't know everything there is to know either. It's just one of those things that has come up in really deep meditations and things like that for me. And all of them I have correlated have very significance on the generational patterns, and even down to chronic illnesses and things like that helps me understand my purpose and what I'm here to do. So it's really solidified that for me.
So this hasn't been a guided thing where you've gone to somebody. Mm-hmm. This has just been through your meditation. You have felt an influence that you align with being your past life.
Yes. Yeah. The most recent one that I found was King Tutankhamun. And he was 19 years old when he passed. He was 9 years old when he started his reign. And I think 9 is such a beautiful number anyway, because it's the completion of a cycle. It's an end and a beginning to something new. And he suffered terrible illnesses. I mean, the list of things that he had, which you have to understand, incest was a huge thing back then to keep the bloodline going.
With most royal,
yes. And so but a lot of what he had, he had connective tissue disorder, which is very common in neurodivergent people. Fibromyalgia, nerve problems, a whole list of other things. But really where it came up for me, he actually revealed himself to me in a dream that I had. And when I started doing more research, which is funny because the week prior to that, I was given a Egyptian book by a friend of mine. And his coordinates, one of his coordinates, where his tomb is actually located, equals my life path number, which is 8. So yeah,
it
was really, it is. I love numerology, and sacred geometry and stuff. I'm always that person that's looking at license plates and billboards and just, anything that jumps out to me, but that was really cool. And then the next day I'm driving down the street and this person is having a garage sale. And I was I'll go in there and see. Got a huge Tutankhamun statue that's worth $200 for $5. It was the most oddball thing in there because it was an older couple and they just had little knickknacks and stuff. And there was this random Egyptian statue
at this place that you stopped by randomly.
Yes. And I was what is this? And so, he also had 2 children that were stillborns. And almost every person that I've come across in my past life has also had 2 children. So the one that I'm kind of like a little bit stumped on as far as like children wise, which I think that she did have another son, which is Moses's mother. But the correlation between all of these is like through the Native woman that lost her children to boarding schools that were taken from her, to Mary, which is Moses's mother, who had to give up her child in an act to save his life because of the murder of all the firstborn sons. And so I've noticed an excessive generational loss of abuse, violence, that is just very systematic throughout all of these systems with Native Americans, with Egyptians, with slavery during that time as well. And fast forwarding to now, I'm able to see how that affects my current reality of like, this is a history of chronic abuse and a cycle that has to end with me. So I feel like now my purpose is to be the one to end those generational cycles, to be the one to say no more, that this is not going to continue on with my children's DNA. And if they choose to have children, that it ends with me, you know?
I could ask many more questions off of that, but we've got to wrap up. Latricia Finley, I'm about to interview next, and I want to make sure that I'm mindful of her time because she's been so patient. So, real quick, can you talk about what services, offerings, whatever else you have right now? Like, this is your platform for a couple minutes to plug whatever you want. Yeah.
Okay, so I am a certified educator in narcissism, narcissistic abuse, attachment theory, and I am a Reiki and yoga practitioner as well. And then I have my podcast now with my best friend. I am no longer taking new clients for hair. I'm actually like really like kind of like an on edge, but really amazing thing to say because I've been trying to get away from hair for like years. And so I just feel like really excited to be able to like finally like release that and be excited for like what is coming to me and like doing things that I actually want to do. I do art. I love to paint. I make handmade crystal jewelry and all types of things. I have a vendor show coming up at Crossroads Church on 89th. They're doing like a holiday market thing.
What will that be? Because this might be out much after that.
It is. It's not until November 24th, I believe. So it's a ways out.
That'll be close though.
It's a ways out. But if you follow me on social media, the Wounded Lotus is my Instagram tag. And you can also follow me like on Facebook under my name. And then our podcast is really what I want to focus on and promote. My TikTok is Maralen, and then our podcast is the Marvelous Masonic Muggles. But I think it's MMM Podcast 23. And that is really where a lot of my focus is going because we are highlighting domestic violence. We're talking about so many different things. So we release episodes every Monday, and then we will actually be back on October 3rd. And then we do Fantastic Fridays on Friday, where we just spend like an hour telling jokes, laughing, being silly, because we just fully believe that laughter is healing, and we're just big kids anyway. So
real quick, if you could give one piece of advice to specifically neurodivergent women to help them avoid abuse, sexual or domestic, what would that be?
Develop so much love for yourself that you gain the courage to never accept anything less than. Never.
That was a good.
Thanks.
That was a very good piece of advice.
Yeah.
Simon understood. So you let us know where you live online. Thank you so much for coming today. Thanks for coming back and doing a second interview. I don't know. We might have to do a third because we still didn't get it all in. There's
it's
so
hard
much
to compact, like 30 plus years in 2 hours. So
and it's not like sometimes I get done with people in an hour, and and it's still a good, nice conversation, but. Maybe it's just because we're neurodivergent and we have so much more that we want to share with the world. Maybe
we are those people that we just meet you and I'm like, now you know my whole life story in 5 minutes,
We call it Hallmark conversations, where you meet somebody and you immediately just go here's my whole life story. My wife coined that. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review. I really appreciate the feedback and it helps me get heard by more listeners. Follow this podcast so you get updates about new episodes and live streams. If you are interested in bonus or behind-the-scenes content, go check out the Authentic on Air with Bruce Alexander Patreon page. Share this episode with someone you think might enjoy it right now. Check out earlier episodes to support the future creation of great content, and don't forget to @Authentic Identity Management on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and LinkedIn. You can also head over to the Authentic Bruce YouTube page on YouTube channel for podcast video and impactful clips from my conversations with these great guests. Finally, if you are struggling to show up as yourself in your content, your work, your family, or your life, I would love to help you. Authentic Identity Management does authenticity and identity coaching to help you align your true self with the identity you share with the world. It's exhausting to live someone else's life. Live authentically and access the potential that belongs only to you. You can contact me on social or email me at bruce@authenticidentitymanagement.com to set up a free 30-minute consultation. That is it for today's episode with Maralen Pennyfeather. Thank you so much again. Thank you for listening, everyone. Until next time, be yourself and love yourself.
You're doing great. Bye.